Hey, in this video, we're going to find out how to see if this harness is faulty or not. I was suspecting that it was an issue, so let me show you how I do that. All right. I ended up thinking that this 20-pin harness here was the cause of the issues that I was having with the laptop connecting with the car with the INPA program, because it used to do it. It used to work fine, and I did remember that when I first started connecting the cord with the K/Dcan cable, I used to have to wiggle it a little bit on the connector for the connection to be made. The first couple of times I did that, which was kind of weird because it was a brand new cable, but I didn't think much of it until now, I guess, that it wasn't working anymore. So what I'm doing now, just because I'm not the type of person that wants to just say, oh, it's the cable that's bad, replace it, get another cable, because not that I can't afford another cable or anything, it's only like 11 bucks. It's just that I don't want to buy another cable and then still have the same problem with the laptop not connecting if the cable is not the problem. So in order for me to see if the cable is the problem the way that it was, I had to disassemble some of it just to get a visual inspection as the first step, because I was suspecting that some of the wiring internally were bad. So I wanted to outrule that. So what I did was I already disconnected this. I looked inside of it. I saw that the soldered connection, the points where they're soldered onto the pins, they look fine. They're not like bad soldered. They're fine. So I don't think that that was a problem. They passed all my continuity tests. I was using this meter to check continuity on the points in here. I noticed that only the inner ring of pins, nothing on the outside ring, are being used to make any connections. So now the other end, where it connects into the OBD here, that would connect into this piece here. So there's some soldered connections on the back of these. I checked them, they're all good. I get connection continuity from this point and the actual pin on the other side, and I also check continuity between the actual pin in here and out there. So all throughout inside, I'm getting continuity. Now another thing that I was able to do was get the pinout diagram of how these things are wired up, say inside. That's very important for the troubleshooting, because I'll be able to see where these pins are supposed to go inside of the OBD connector, and more importantly, where these pins are supposed to go inside of the vehicle connector. It says that I have a power and a ground, and then two K and an L line, I guess, for the communication. I believe that the E class or the E chassis BMWs, like E38, E36, E39, those are all on K line. That's why you got that K/Dcan cable. You want to be on the K line when you're transmitting information through the computers. So on here, the K line communication is going to be on one of these two pins here. One of these is 12 volt. One of these, I believe, is the K line. Then I have ground on these two over here, and then this one is some other shit. I forgot what it was, but it's all on the diagram. And then the next step that I would do is I would go to the car and see if everything checks out in the actual vehicle. So first thing was I opened this up. I checked to make sure that all the soldered points were good, pretty much like how I opened this side up. And pretty much I was just checking to see on these connections if any of the wires are broken, if anything looks pretty much out of place. Because sometimes when you get little small wires like that and you try to solder them, the connection's really not that good. Then you want to make sure you check continuity from this soldered point to the other side of the connector. You also want to check that the continuity is flowing from the appropriate pin to where it's supposed to go. And also, I forgot to mention that it is lined up properly. For instance, I don't know if you can catch this with the camera, but see how they got numbers in there? 1, and it goes all the way around, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 20. There's 20 pins. So let's say 17, for instance, would be right there. 17, right? So 17 would have to correspond to the appropriate pin here, okay? And if it does, then you should have continuity between that pin and that pin. So if all that checks out, the solder looks good, and you don't see anything out of place, then you can say that the harness itself, it seems good. I don't see why it would be the fault. You know what I mean? So I don't want to just replace this thing and say that, oh, I'm going to get another one and that should fix the problem. Because if you get another one that works, you should be in the same boat that you're in now. You have a harness that actually works. There's nothing wrong with it, but you still won't get no connection in the car because that's not the problem. So that's what troubleshooting is going to do. So to take this a step further, I have to make sure that when you actually plug this piece into the car, there's supposed to be a wire here that's power. There's supposed to be a pin there that's ground. Make sure that the ground and the power is actually present in the vehicle. I'm not sure what kind of signals the K and the L line send, so I can't really test those. It might be data, it might be some other shit, but I can check it out to see if I can find out. But either way, power and ground should definitely be present, and I should be able to check that with the meter, plug this in, and now since I have this disconnected, I'll have access to these pins. Once that's plugged in, power and ground should be present on these pins, because at the end, this is what I would actually be plugging into the K/Dcan cable, because it's a interconnect between this and the and this. So if it's transmitting through these pins, and they should go through this piece of plastic, all it is you got to stick the pins in through there. I had to wiggle this in order for it to make connection, so maybe something in there wasn't touching the K/Dcan cable. So my next step is to go to car. I'm gonna go plug this in and go check to see if I have the 12 volts and the ground over there. Okay, for the next step, we're here at the diagnostic link in the actual vehicle. So this is the 20 pin connector, and then if you look in there carefully, you can see the numbers supposed to correspond with the connector that we had over there. And from the diagram, it says that pin 19 and pin 14 are power and ground. So pin 19 right here, and then pin 14 is right here. So that one and that one, the ones that are directly across from each other, 19 and 14, those are supposed to be power and ground. Now I tested them, and I do get ground here, and here 14 I do get 12 volts. The only problem is it's a constant 12 volts, so it's hot at all times. I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to be, because if that is the case, then I'm not exactly sure how the K/Dcan cable is supposed to differentiate between that and when the car is in ignition. If it used that wire and the car was actually started, there would be a jump in the actual voltage because the alternator would kick in, so you get an extra like volt or 2 or 3 depending on the car. So I can see how it would tell the difference there. But just by putting the car into the accessory position or the ignition position, I don't know how that wire of 12 volts is going to change enough for the cable to pick up that the car is in ignition, unless of course the K line kicks in. But that doesn't make any sense either, because in my mind the K line is only necessary for different functions when you want to do diagnosis. You should still be able to pick up ignition and go into the different categories and load up didnt files on INPA with just ignition. I thought, you know, correct me if I'm wrong. So either way, just so that this could be a learning experience for my new guys wanting to troubleshoot. Inside here, there is a 12 volt source. You see that big thick red wire where it goes down to right there. That point right there is where I connected my red lead on my multimeter, and then with the black lead I put it right in pin 19. See pin 19 right here. I put the black lead of my multimeter in there, and then when I put the red one, well, as a matter of fact, as you can see, pin 14 should be right here, and that should be 12 volts. So when I put pin 14, see, and then pin 19, I get 12.6 on the meter. That's the voltage at the battery. So those two connections are actually giving me the 12.6. So now if I plug in the connector, I should get 12.6 on the corresponding wires, right? So let's set that up and see. All right, so see now I have the 20 pin harness connected to the actual diagnostic link, and then I have these exposed so that I could test. According to the diagram, pin 4 and 5, which are these two together here, are supposed to be ground. Those are the ones that are connected to pin 19, which is the ground, you know what I mean? And then pin 16, which is the last one here on a 16 pin harness, that's supposed to be 12 volt power. So if I touch here and here, I should get 12 volts on the meter if the 12 volts is traveling from here where it was verified. If it travels through the harness, which we already verified continuity, so it should, we would expect 12 volts to be present on this side of the harness, okay? I checked it, it is. It does give me 12 volts. On this gives me ground, that gives me 12 volts. So that, you know, yeah, that would seem to me like that cable's working. Now the only next thing that I would have to check to verify that the 12 volts actually goes through this once I put that connector on, because there's a little cap that goes on there, and once I put that on, I still have to plug the K/Dcan cable on that as well. You could lose something in the connection on that step. So I would have to verify that and see that the current is still going through past that plastic connector in order for me to say that, you know, this is not the problem. But so far so good. I don't think that this is the problem. Now, if it's not the problem, my next thing would be what's past here, because I know that power and ground is coming out of here, But like I was telling you, K and L communication, I don't know how to read that right now. So there's no way for me to test and see if the K line communication is coming through for the computer to read it. So that might be an issue. I would suspect that it is. And then mind you, I don't have anything plugged in right now. The ignition is off. I'm still getting constant 12 on there. I don't know if you're supposed to or not. It makes sense that you do, because what if your car couldn't start? What if your battery was completely giving you issues, or it wasn't dead, but for some reason you get no battery voltage anywhere in the car, and you want to try to diagnose something? If you want to plug in your diagnosing tool, your scanner or whatever, you got to get something, you know. So maybe there's like a residual 12 in there. It's possible. So that would make sense. Other than that, I don't know how it would differentiate between the ignition. But that's not for me to know at the moment. For me right now, the next step would be plugging in the plastic part, testing to see if I get 12 volts on the other side. Now, when I plugged the harness into the OBD, there was a LED that lit up on this cable. There was an LED that lit up right here, this. I don't know that if when this receives power, does that LED light up? Because I know that when I plugged that in before, that LED never lit up. Maybe there was a problem in the connection, I don't know. I wish that LED did light up so that you know for sure that you do have a good connection. That could be an easy way to diagnose the cable connection as well with that LED. That would be a good feature on this. But for now, I'm going to try plugging that in and seeing if I do get this to light up, or maybe it doesn't light up when it gets 12 volts. But I do want to check on this end to see if I get continuity. That will be my next troubleshooting step. And I'll let you guys know how that goes. All right. Okay, so I verified this is good. Actually, it's not at fault like I suspected it was. So shame on me for just blaming this, but it's actually a good cord. Everything works out. It's checked out. Soldering is decent. And we checked the other side of these pins. They work as well. What we don't know now is once we put this plastic housing on, does it transfer all of the connection into the Dcan cable? So once I plug this into the Dcan cable, I won't be able to check anything because of this plastic housing. So what I'm going to have to do is open this up, plug this in here, and then test it right there at the circuit board. So let me set that up for you guys, and then I'll show you how that tests out. Yeah, this is how you test things, man. You don't just say things are bad. You got to test them out. You got to make sure. I'm trying to figure out why the cable doesn't work anymore. So this is all a learning process for me too. I'm pretty decent with electronics. I know my shit there. So I would know if it's a bad connection or if a cable's loose or something like technical like that. I would know. But once it comes to the software side, if it's an issue there, like with some kind of driver that's not working or something like that, oh man, I would be clueless. So that's why I'm saying I got to get better with that. I'm trying my best to learn this. I'm picking brains on forums and things like that, trying to learn. But I don't know other than these connections. This one is good. I checked this connection before. It's good. I was trying to figure out if you put power and ground on those pins, these two pins here, and then pin 16, so 4, 5, and 16 here, ground there, power there, if it would light up this LED. I tried to test it out, but it didn't light up. When I plug it into an OBD, it lights up. I don't know why. So I'm not too sure how this connector is wired up. I'm gonna open it up now, check it out, and then I'll see what's what. All right, so give me a sec. Okay, so with the connector open, those are the pins over there. So I don't know if you can see right up in the corner, there's a 16, and then if you go up, there's an 8. So 8 and 16 is telling you that that's where the corresponding pins are. so you could get an orientation of what's 1 and 2 and 3. Then if you look here, those two that's on the top there, that's pin 7 and 8. Pin 7 and 8 for this K line to be read by the INPA program have to be bridged together. So that pin 7 and 8 are soldered together, and those are what's connected to the switch. Okay, so on the other side of this, you have the switch. So when the switch is in that position, that's how you connect those two. So 7 and 8 are supposed to be connected through the switch. Mind you, there's nothing connected to pin number 8 at all. There's only connections made on pin number 7, pin 4 and 5, pin 15 and 16. Okay, according to the diagram. So that's what we're going to be testing. Some way inside there with those integrated circuits and those chips in there, they do all the communication that's necessary. I'm not too versed in what those things do, but if anything's wrong inside of there, I guess I can double check there. I'll get myself a microscope, check the circuit board, see if anything's broken. I'm gonna do some double checking there, and then I'll tell you what I find, and we'll see what's up. All right, I think I found what the problem with this is. I actually think I found it. Let's see if it works. This K/Dcan cable is supposed to have a switch here. You see this little switch? It's supposed to connect pins 7 and 8 inside of this harness. Now, when you look at an OBD harness from this position, okay, from this orientation, starting from the top, is pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these two there on the top corner are going to be 7 and 8. This would be down here 15 and 16. So this last one is 16. This last one here is 8. Okay, so 7 and 8 would be these two pins here. These are the two pins that are supposed to be bridged together with this switch. However, when I test continuity with the switch, and I found this out by doing my continuity testing here, so that's why it's always good to check your connections. The pins that are actually fused together when you move the switch are 1 and 2. It's opposite of what's supposed to be. So when you flip that switch, it makes a connection between 1 and 2, which is not supposed to be connected, because 1 and 2, to be honest, are not even in the circuit. Okay, so this used to work before. I don't know how, to be honest. I don't know how it was working before. I never changed anything. This is exactly how I got it. But when I opened it up and tested it, that's what it is. Pins 1 and 2 are fused. So let me set the test up so I can show you, and then I'll be right back. All right, so I have it open there. You see on the top corner there where it says 8. I'm going to turn it around. Where that 8 was, that corresponds to number 1, dude. Pin number 1 is what they're calling pin number 8. Ain't that about a bitch, man? Got me over here fucking breaking my brain. So right under there is pin number 16, which would be pin number 9. So this is actually not correct. That board is probably upside down. Yeah. So let me turn that board up around and see if that works. Maybe that's what the problem was. Wow. All right, I've been looking, man. There's really no way to fix this shit, because the way that this board is set up, you see that center row of pins, like right, that center row down there, that's actually on the board. So if I was to turn this upside down to the proper orientation, then those connectors won't have anywhere to connect into. So this board was just wired up wrong from factory. I don't know how the hell they sent it to me like this. The way this was supposed to work, like this connector here, number 1, which is wired onto the board. Let me get some better lighting. I want you guys to see this, what I'm seeing. You see right there, that connector right there is connected to number 1. In order for this circuit to operate, I would imagine that that is supposed to be feeding something there, maybe some kind of signal. But number 1, or what they think is number 1, which is really number 8, okay, is not even in the circuit. So if you turn this around, where you see where that number 1 is, that's number 8 there. So if they really wanted something to be connected to number 1, they would have put it over there, and number 1 doesn't even have anything connected to it in this circuit the way it's supposed to be wired up. There's not supposed to be any connections at number 1. So this whole board wouldn't turn on, I would imagine, without this. And if you was to turn this upside down, then that would be number 9. And again, number 9's not in this circuit, so that wouldn't work. Whatever's supposed to happen on this board, it's going to come out on these wires here. And that's what actually goes through into the USB connection. So there's you see that in the corner there, 5 volts. Your 12 volts comes in, it steps down to 5 volts right there. Supposed to, this black wire is going to be your ground. It says ground there. So if this were to turn on, I would be able to check right here, that red and black wire, I should get 5 volts. If this was sending through the USB when I connected it. I'm almost positive that I'm not going to get that. Guarantee that I'm not going to get that. I'm not even going to waste my goddamn time no more with this troubleshooting, because once I see that this board is wired up like this, it's not going to work. Now, the only thing that's troubling me is how did it work in the first place? Because like I told you before, when I first connected this thing, it worked. I was able to connect with the car. I got into some of the different menus and stuff like that. So the cable was working. And it was wired up the same way. Only thing I can think is that I'm fucking bugging. That's the only thing I could think, because it shouldn't have worked. Not the way that it's wired up here. Now, the way this goes, this is supposed to be 8. That's supposed to be 1. These 2 are supposed to be connected for the K line. So the way it's wired now, there's no K line communication coming in. These 2 would be ground regardless. But if this was flipped upside down, so that the orientation could be correct, then the grounds would be on the bottom, and then that wouldn't work either. So there's no way to fix this harness, telling you. 16, which is over there in the corner, that's supposed to be 12 volts. There's nothing even connected to that pin at all. So there's no 12 volts coming in. So even though I would connect my 20-pin harness and everything is transmitting through there, the signals would not be coming in here properly. 12 volts wouldn't be coming in. It wouldn't be getting stepped down to the 5 volts here. None of this would be working because of the way that, you know, this board was put in. Okay, so this board is backwards. It doesn't work, and that's why I'm having issues connecting to the car. It's not giving me any ignition. It's not giving me any signal that it's connected, and that's exactly why. So I know almost 100% that that's the reason. I'm looking at it here. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. And when I'm doing my continuity checks, the only pins that are connecting with the switch is 1 and 2, not 7 and 8. So K-line, I'm pretty sure, is not even going to be active here, and I need K-line for all of my model vehicles to use INPA. I have an E38, I have an E36, I have an E39, E53. All of those are the older vehicles that need this stupid cable, but the cable has to work. So, okay, troubleshooting is over. This is the problem. It wasn't the other poor little cable, it's this one. And this is the verification so that you guys can see what I was talking about. Okay?